Before we begin, we light a candle for one of you, our kith and kin out there listening. When called on, we hold space for a voice, a story, or a name so that no ember burns alone.
This week, the candle is for Theo, who wrote, "We need to move by December, and my spouse still has to get hired for this job they keep interviewing for. Any help would be appreciated."
Know that you are seen, and that your voice is a part of ours. We light this candle for you and your request. The flame is lit. Your fire is carried. We remember you.
Welcome back to the Ember Report, where witches are mad and doing something about it. I'm Lydian, the voice in the flame, and you can find us on Instagram at the Ember Report to keep up with all of the updates.
I'm Len, the Witch of the Crossroads, and make sure to check out the Patreon at www.patreon.com/theemberreport.
And I'm Sebastian, the Sorcerer of Annihilation. You can find me on Instagram at sebas_the_storm, where I offer divination, sorcery for hire, mentorship, and more.
Here is where we raise the lantern for the exiles.
And keep that tea hot for the queers, the cunning folk, and the activists who never fit the mold.
This week we're joined by somebody we have all been a huge fan of for a very, very long time. Austin, BanexBramble, is at the news desk with us. Austin, welcome.
Welcome to me. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me is what I meant to say. Howdy, everybody.
Come on in, family.
The fire is kindled.
The Sabbath begins now. Today we need to talk to you about the Day of the Dead, necromancy, honoring the dead, and why it's important in the fight against fascism. Before we get into that, however, we have 3 stories to share with you. 3 stories, 3 things, each directing you where to put your fight.
Our first story, millions of Americans are set to lose SNAP benefits. According to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, almost 42 million Americans who rely on the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program have not received their benefits on November 1st because of the government shutdown. And this is a quote directly from the USDA site on the SNAP page. Quote, "Senate Democrats have now voted 12 times to not fund the food stamp program, also known as the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. Bottom line, the well has run dry. At this time, there will be no benefits issued November 1st. We are approaching an inflection point for Senate Democrats. They can continue to hold out for healthcare for illegal aliens and gender mutilation procedures, or reopen the government so mothers, babies, and the most vulnerable among us can receive critical nutrition assistance." End quote.
Let's shed some light on the subject. The federal government shut down on October 1st after lawmakers failed to pass a budget resolution. In budget negotiations, Democrats were seeking to extend health insurance tax credits, the Affordable Care Act first implemented in 2021. Republicans, however, wanted to pass a budget first before negotiating health care credits. With the government still shut down, the USDA will not receive funds for the food assistance program. In a memo, USDA said the agency will not use contingency funds to pay for the food benefits. One last not-so-fun fact worthy of note: the federal government spent $110.3 billion on the program during the 2024 fiscal year. That is less than 2% of the federal budget.
The witch's verdict is clear. This is a ruse. The Republicans control the White House, the Senate, not to mention the courts. To say that this is somehow the fault of the left is not only asinine, it is blatantly a lie. Pushed by the right to further dig their grips into our lives, they want to control everything, so they are holding people's health care hostage to do so. They are dragging this out, not anyone else. Witches should be directing their workings to getting the government reopened, targeting those who can make it happen.
Our next story, Representative-elect Grijalva, the first Latina ever elected to Congress from Arizona, has not been sworn in. It has been more than a month. As of Sunday the 2nd, it has been 40 days since her election was certified, and she has yet to be sworn into the House of Representatives. Republicans, most notably Speaker of the House Mike Johnson, blamed the government shutdown for the delay, despite having the power to call the House in session for her swearing in. Republicans currently control the House, Senate, the executive branch, and a majority on the Supreme Court, giving party leadership the ability to act in line with their goals, including supporting President Donald Trump.
Let's hold a lantern up to this. During his campaign, he promised to release the Epstein files, a collection of documents detailing the alleged crimes of convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, his associates, and other high-profile figures, perhaps including Trump. Despite controlling the Department of Justice, which holds the files, Trump has still not fully released them and has criticized supporters who continue to demand disclosure. This brings us back to Representative-elect Grijalva, who has been vocal about her support for releasing the files. Once sworn in, she would become the 218th member of the House to support a discharge petition, potentially forcing a vote that Johnson has delayed on releasing the files. She believes this is a major reason for her delayed swearing in. And honestly, we're inclined to agree.
The witch's verdict is clear. We should be doing more magic to help this cause. We should be working our spirits to get this lady into D.C. so we could have justice for the victims of this ring of criminals with the orange asshole at the top.
And as always, we continue to shed a light on the genocide in Gaza. Israel's military says ceasefire is back on as death toll from overnight strikes in Gaza reaches 104. After it announced the restoration of the ceasefire, the Israeli military said it carried out another airstrike in northern Gaza, targeting what it called a site where weapons were being stored for an imminent attack. Al-Shifa Hospital in Gaza City said it received 2 bodies from the strike. U.S. President Donald Trump defended Israel's strikes, but also insisted the escalation won't wreck the truce.
Addressing this, once again, Israel is pulling some bullshit and pushing the limits of what a ceasefire looks like for them. They continue to commit war crimes. They continue to kill innocent Palestinian people. They continue to commit crimes against humanity itself.
The witch's verdict is crystal clear. Israel must answer for its war crimes. Period. End of discussion. No further comment. It's time for witches who can to turn their focus on doing work to make that happen. We're not saying that it can happen overnight, but we are saying that it should be happening. All right, everybody, we've had a lot of news, but with that said, let's widen the circle. Austin, our lovely guest, it has been such a pleasure to have a little conversation with you beforehand, but today we are talking about the Day of the Dead, because it is the Day of the Dead. But we also want to talk to you about necromancy a little bit, because you are actually going to be teaching a course on necromancy, correct?
Yeah, I'm doing a course with my lovely friend and brother in blasphemy, Matthew Venus, who runs Spiritus Arcanum over on his side of things, and I'm teaching the course, but I'm doing it through his shop, and it is a 6-week course called Foundations of Necromancy, or I'm sorry, 6-month course called Foundations of Necromancy, where we and hopefully by the end of it giving foundational techniques. I'm giving foundational techniques of not only working with the dead, but really starting at a pretty simple place of like utilizing and strengthening sight, mediumship, developing relationship with ancestral guides and things like that, and then going through all the more intense stuff. So we actually just on our first class a couple of weeks ago, and this month will be the second one, and then so on and so forth, and until March, I think. March, May, something like that. Um, yeah, so it's a long one. But I also just did my Culture Tampa meetup yesterday, and we also talked about necromancy. So it's fresh in my brain. So I'm excited to talk about it with y'all today.
Hell yes. We are going to talk about that occult salon a little bit later, maybe even in the post show, but put a pin in that. Um, so, I guess the question to the group at large is this. What does the Day of the Dead, or excuse me, why does the Day of the Dead matter right now, given our situation? Why should we be celebrating it? What should we be doing to work with these spirits of the dead, given the fact that we are literally in the middle of civil war?
Yeah, I think that um, it's interesting. We had yesterday at the salon we had a really interesting conversation where um obviously, a lot of people know, including a lot of the people at the salon, they're like, oh, conveniently, it's a nice self plug to have the ability to do, my foundations of necromancy and then doing all this necromancy stuff. And I'm like, that's not untrue, but it is also like the time of the year, I think, where people talk about the veil being thin and, um, it's a veil, it's thin. But there are points where it's like, these energies ramp up. And for me personally, I always find that like the dead, not just the dead, but these sorceress, this witchy dead has like something very strong, or their power is stronger when the night is longer and things like that. But on top of that also, the other conversation that we were having is this like, well, the dead are always there, right? And it's not just like during the Catholic feast of like All Souls or All Saints, um, but because we have these festival holidays that wherever Catholicism spreads, it usually layers these feast days on top of whatever. I saw a friend, more an acquaintance online who made a post about the Day of the Dead and said Day of the Dead, and somebody like some criticism was like, I didn't think you were like Latinx, which we can get into that, but whatever. Somebody was like, I didn't think you were Latinx, blah blah blah. In fact, I know you're not. It was like trying to be like some kind of like call out criticism, and I was like, she was raised Catholic. I'm like, and she's Italian American. They have a Day of the Dead too. It's just she's saying it in English. So it was very funny. But
Hmm.
why is it important to? Because I have not answered your question in the slightest. Um, I think that the dead, especially people who have come before us, I'm lucky to adjacently know people who have been around some very pivotal moments in the civil rights movement, and hearing their stories and hearing what was going on, um, and they're still alive. Um, to know that there's such an importance of living your life on top of all this stuff, of being very serious and taking this stuff seriously, but then also like having to go dance afterwards and having a party afterwards and like getting together because there was a very bleak point in the 2020s, or the early 2020. We're still in the 2020s, but in that like COVID era where a lot of people were not going outside, we couldn't, and there was still a lot of shit going on. So I think a lot of people took to their keyboards and their phones and things like that and met some sort of like trying our best activism, but it also started to make a lot of people, their cop mentality come out really bad. And I think that the witch space loved um, vindication and villainization just as much as others. so it was really interesting, but I think that we're coming a little bit more out of a space now where maybe some people have realized like that doesn't actually, that's kind of like the bare minimum, and being a cop doesn't help anybody. And so I think that like listening to people who have lived through the AIDS crisis, people who were a part of Stand Up Act Out and things like that is just like, so we would go to a protest at 8, go to the hospital by 10, um, be in jail till 6, and then by 8 we were back out at the club, and then you went home at 2 a.m. and then you started it, the whole day all over again. And so that emphasis on having and living a life, and not just living a life blatantly or frivolously, I should say, but to go out and actually enjoy that, to dance, to have fun, to be around people, to support a local community in that way. I think that is very important. And what does that have to do with the dead is I think that if your practices, if your own personal cultus of the dead isn't teaching you how to live your life better, then in my humble opinion, I don't think that it is purposeful. And I personally don't see a point in it. So that's the short answer to a long plank.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I have to agree. I mean, working with the dead, and again, in our humble opinion, in my humble opinion anyway, I think you should be picking up some things on how to live. These people were once alive, they had lives, they made mistakes, they had challenges, they overcame obstacles, they were a part of something. You're alive, you're a part of the history of humanity, whether that's just it doesn't really matter what your role is, right? You are a part of this bigger picture. And I think it can be a really great and humbling experience when you are working with the dead or interacting with them to be reminded of a lot of different things. But also, I think why Dia de los Muertos or Day of the Dead matters right now, given the current civil war, the political climate we're in, is also like, okay, we are practitioners. We aren't just limited to those who are alive with us. This is part of us performing our work. And if this is a part of your practice, which in my own opinion, I think it really should be, is like, okay, let's work with the dead to get some shit done because they got some shit done when they were alive. And so we can do that now with their help in a number of ways.
Yeah, they have fought the same battles, if not similar. So, of course, they have input and insight that would help us benefit a lot.
They have fought the same battles as we have before. That is something that I think when I'm thinking about which ancestors' movements or struggles echo here, which is the next question. We kind of have already touched on that a little bit, especially Austin, but it's one of those things where they have done the fighting. They fought already. So why are we they're probably screaming at us, honestly, and being like, why are you complacent? What are you doing? I know that when Trump was elected again, my ancestors were almost screaming at me to hide my practice because they were like, you got to get more clever than this. You got to be more savvy. And I've talked about this before, but we don't have the luxury of hiding anymore. We have to be very visible. I mean, most of us, I should say most of us, because there are people out there who need to be hidden and need to be safe. But a lot of us don't have the luxury of being hidden anymore. We have to do the work. And that work is extensive, and it is not fun because it's combating the government. And who wants to do that, honestly? It's so much bigger than us. I mean, aside from Sebastian, because Sebastian just wants to burn everything down. And Lynn, of course. It's just one of those things, though, that it's so much bigger than us, but we have to remind ourselves that we are so much bigger than them. Like, there are far more of us than there are of them. Even in our military, the amount of civilian to military, sure, they have guns, but the civilians I know also have guns. So if there were to be an actual conflict that pops off, it'd be a fair fight, in my opinion. But the ancestors, the movements, the struggles, they're all the same. Yet, why are we not seeing forward movement, is the question.
I've said it once, I'll say it again. Americans are very lazy. Um, it's very easy, not only because Americans in general are just kind of lazy, and that's just kind of what we've been ingrained with since like the start. But I think too is that kind of idea of like freezing, right? Like fight, flight, or freeze. A lot of people have been conditioned to freeze. And by freezing, it also is what can I do to ignore this? What can I do to avoid this? Oh, I don't watch the news. It's too depressing. Oh, I don't get involved in that. Oh, I'm just not going to do anything. Oh, I'm just one person. I'm not going to do that. That's not going to have an impact. These are the kind of concepts that are the problems, in my opinion, of why we're not seeing forward movement is because people are too frozen in fear to kind of move in any sort of direction, but also they don't know what direction to move in. They're being thrown so many things and being overwhelmed with so much information sometimes that they just don't know where to direct that energy, direct that action, that movement, but also kind of like how Austin was saying, like it almost is like to the point where you freeze and you don't know how to live, right? How to enjoy yourself, because that's super important too. We've talked about this on previous episodes as well. And it's like, okay, you need to balance these things out, but also things need to get done. And I've said it once, I'll say it again. You have to do shit scared. Just do it scared.
No, I mean, I think that with this stuff too, I think that there is to some degree, I think, it's easy to say that at this point there's a level of like, you can't be ignorant about what's going on, and I find that to be true, but I also think that um, the propaganda machine of like Meta is actually like scary good because I know people in my life who like they don't see the same things that I'm seeing, like to the point where I'm like, oh, this is the machine is actually very tailored to
Are you even living in
keep
America?
right, and that's the thing is it's like it's a little crazy how talking to people over a certain age and or a certain demographic or whatever, and it's like I'm like, oh, it's not even that you're getting the Fox propaganda news. I'm like, you're not getting the news at all. And that I think is also, part of some things that are going on as well. And so despite the fact that sure we can't ignore certain things that are going on, I think also too the way that we receive information is, thank God for the internet and being able to do this podcast here, but also at the same time, um, it's all tangled up. The streaming platforms that we're using, the streaming platform we're using right now, the streaming platform I use is still, a complicated subject in like how this media is distributed and who owns the rights to what we're even saying. And so I think like one of the best things to do presently is to, again, coming out of that post-COVID like 2020 period where the internet and social media was being used so heavily, and then I think people realizing how manipulated and how fickle it can be based off like a group of like five people um, who own just about everything. And I think the best thing that we can do to remediate that is to or to remedy that is to focus on smaller groups of people, smaller local, like people that you can talk to immediately, and start getting on everybody's like level of like information, and then dispensing that information in ways that it can be posters and uh, flower glue, and I think that we have to go a little bit back to these analog methods of our own propaganda and our own distribution of information.
You raised a couple interesting points, and one of those, the propaganda machine is fierce, and honestly, streaming platforms are not to be trusted half the time because, like, Spotify, this is something we wanted to address with our listeners, but, like, Spotify is playing ice ads now. So if you get your show, if you're listening to us on Spotify, stop. Go listen to it on YouTube or Apple Music or somewhere they're not playing those things until we can figure out a different way to start streaming to you. But the issue is that there is so much disinformation out there. It is very much like, even with our independent news sources, it's like, how do we make sure that they're getting the right information too? Where are we getting our sources? Where are we getting the facts? Where does fact bleed into political commentary? And, those things, because I can't say that because 75 million Americans voted for him, but any idiot would realize that we are being lied to, our money is being misappropriated, and our resources are being drained. But yet, this motherfucker has the audacity to come on Fox News or anywhere else and be like, it's the Democrats' fault. It's the Democrats' fault. We don't even have the power. We're not even in power right now. And it's our fault. And I think when our ancestors see this, like, they have to be screaming at us, because, like, they are getting to this place where the dead just feel restless to me. They feel, like, angry. Especially older generations that, like, know what a quote-unquote America is supposed to be like. They're rolling in their graves. And I just think that our ancestors probably think we should do better.
1,000%. Yeah, so, like, kind of coming back to that, it's like, okay, if we're working the dead, we have to remember that there's, like, different classifications of the dead, like, not every spirit is, like, I always go back to this just because it's, like, what I'm most familiar with, but, like, we all know, if you've listened to the podcast, my court of spirits is extremely wrathful. So not all spirits are wrathful, though. There are these different spirits, but the point is that these spirits are still wanting to get things done. They're asking, and you, as a living practitioner, like, hey, we got things done back when I was alive. Why are you doing nothing right now? Let's get that done. Let's get some action. Let's see something happen, right? Because you are a practitioner. That means go practice.
Yes. I have a couple things that I wanted to say. So you guys were, Lydian, you had talked about, like, the, Austin, you as well, talking about resources, information, where we're getting our information. I do all the research for the podcast, for our stories. So I try, like, it's really hard to find things that are not opinion-based or that are completely factual. It takes me days. Like, the sources that I have for what we talked about today, in regards to Arita Grijalva, I only found opinion pieces. There was, like, one or two that was maybe factual information, but it was, like, one or two things. And then also going back to what we were talking about just a little bit ago, I think that a lot of people, even with access to the accurate information, to the right information, things that are unbiased, they are too focused on individualism, focused on me, focused on what they get from it, that they don't really give a shit about other people. We've kind of pulled away from community, like being communal, engaging with each other, things like that. But that, I just wanted to include that as well.
As you should. I have a question, not to pivot, because, like, we are kind of, I wouldn't say we're veering off topic at all. I think we're veering on topic because that's just what we do. We like to, listeners, as you probably realize now, we like to do this thing where we do it's called the pivot according to Donald Trump, you pivot onto something else when we're asked a direct question. No, I'm totally kidding. But it's
Bitch,
almost
shut
like
up. Carry on. Just kidding.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Austin, you do your own version, I would assume, of like an All Saints or Day of the Dead feast, or like you celebrate your own way, correct? When it comes to honoring them or showing up in your life or work, what is it that you're comfortable sharing? How does that look for you? Is it something that is it a lot of your practice? Is it just a little bit? Is it something that, like, when you're out doing work for the community, the dead are like close by you and you want to, or you're not like Teresa Caputo where it's like, oh my God, your Aunt Sally's here and she's, telling me that the money's in the basement.
Yeah, I think I should also say the way that like ancestral practices are worked and the way that like necromancy is worked, I kind of hold them differently. But ancestors for me are very important. They've become very important in the work that I do as a force to make everything go easier and smoother, and so that looks very. All of it looks surprisingly very simple, at least on the ancestral side, because I try and keep the dead just appeased and happy and all of that. But on the as far as Day of the Dead stuff is as well as just standard necromantic practices, it looks like a lot of coffee, a lot of water. I have a little bit of a background in some forms of spiritism, and so it oftentimes starts to veer into that territory where there's a lot of meditation, a lot of listening. It's a practice of consistency and all of that. And I'm being a little bit vague about it just because I don't want to give too much of my own stuff away.
Be as vague as you need to.
But yeah, there's definitely like some I shouldn't say classic spiritism going on, although some days I'm like I can be a very scientific Kardecian, and then other days I'm like doing other stuff. So
let's throw shit at the wall, see what sticks.
Yeah, and so in that regard, but it's very, the dead are foundational to everything that I do, and they've really become that, as they give a lot of stability into my life, a lot of ease of motion, a lot of access into the things that I need, and it can be very beneficial to remind your dead, like this is what I need, and giving examples, because again, great Aunt Sally might be the person to be like keep your head down, and because that's what she did in her life, and it's like we're just trying to survive over here and not cause a big fuss, but sometimes you have to be more like, no, this is what we need. So it can be very that, but in terms of on the necromantic side of things, I mean, again, the dead are very, for me, necromancy, and to kind of give a definition of what that is of course the interrogation, the pacting with, and then the also sometimes the commanding of the dead as well to get them to do things for you. And so this is oftentimes through means of divination, and of course the magical or the sorcerer side of things, and then also sometimes the straight up witchcraft of it. And so that looks very different, and a little bit more, not as peaceful. Um, yeah, I
You're
hope that
beating up
answered
on the
your
dead,
question.
aren't you, at the graveyards? I knew it. You
uh,
get that devil's club out, and you're like, listen, bitches, who wants
yeah,
to get to work?
exactly. Yeah.
Just out there with the
Uh,
pinnacles, just
Hmm.
yeah,
commanding.
throwing
Yeah,
pinnacles all over the place. You get a pinnacle, and you get a pinnacle.
yeah, absolutely.
Um, you probably can't answer this, but that's okay. But are there any death spirits that you are working with closely that you feel comfortable sharing or talking about a little bit? And the
I
answer
like,
can be no. So,
yeah, no, I think that I can answer this. I mean, it it depends on the situation, right? So, most of the time, like, to take the attention off me and put it onto my clients, because that's what they pay me for, um, is, especially with working with like clients on an individual basis, is I will, if I need to, if the divination calls to go to the dead. It's funny how much stuff is coming up for my clients lately where it's like you have to do your own ancestral stuff and like give them a little bit more space in your life, and that comes up a lot where it's like um, getting people not trained on some form of classic spiritism, because I don't think that everybody needs to do that, but if you're giving people the tools to be like, let's set up a small space on a bookshelf or something like that to like be dedicated to your ancestral veneration practices, like that's a good place to start. But if it gets to the point where it's like, okay, now I have to um, go to somebody who's dead to get work done, right? Court case work is a really good example of that, of where, you might do work for somebody who is being tried or something like that, and you might talk to a just judge, as we might say, somebody who was known for being partial or impartial to your benefit in life, but typically somebody who is known for being like a very like just judge in life. And so sometimes this actually looks like talking to people. God forbid we do that.
oh
Talking to
my
people in like
goodness.
your neighborhood, who have lived there for like a long time, and sometimes it also looks like some internet sleuthing and like digging through newspaper articles and like finding people who did stuff for the town that was in your benefit. Um, uh, so having, again, this like partial quality of like when I approach this spirit, whether it be a painter or it could be somebody you really like, or um, actually going to a judge is a good example, because I can remind him like, hey, we're kind of in the same plight. Um, so having a repertoire, especially if you're a professional worker, to be able to have like, okay, I know at least like one dead person I know of who can solve this particular problem. At least I think he can. And then you probably actually need to have like two or three, in case that one says no. So, uh, you know, that's kind of a way that I approach the dead, and have recently had to do certain um, things like that. So, getting people to work, it starts at home.
It's all about networking, honey. Really, it really is. I can't emphasize that enough. If we're working things like that, like for example, if we have that spirit, talking about court cases, I've said this before, but like if I have a court case or anything that requires a sort of situation that resembles court, that includes anything with authority, that includes anything with negotiation. I'm working a spirit that's a lawyer or was a lawyer when they were alive. But I'm also telling them, like, hey, I know you also have a network of spirits of the dead. If you can't do this, I need you to go find somebody who can, and see what you can do on there, right? Like, what can you negotiate with them? What can you trade with them? What can we do in order to make sure that that work happens in various ways? I've don't think I've said it on the main show, but on the post show, I think I have. But I have like a one of my primary spirits I work with, not human. It is kind of like my office assistant in the way I'm like, okay, I need this done. I need you to bring me whatever spirit or go find what spirit would work best for this. Tell me what they need, what they want. Let's negotiate that, and then let's see what we can do. But kind of like what Austin was saying, like same for me. Like if I'm channeling the dead, if I'm performing necromancy, if I'm doing ancestral work, it all looks kind of different. Like in big ways too. Like we were saying, like necromancy is a bit more commanding. It's a little more, I guess the word I would use is intense versus like my ancestral practice. Although, as I said, my spirits are pretty wrathful, so sometimes that ancestral work does look crazy. There's machetes and a bunch of other shit that's happening. But
I do remember what I was going to say. That's right, listeners. Sometimes spirits can say no. And it is important to remember that you should have a backup and a backup to your backup sometimes because, yeah, you could be a really great practitioner, but consent is sexy, even in witchcraft. And if a spirit tells you no, you should respect that, in my opinion. My humble opinion, I should say. Because there's how many spirits out there? You don't need that particular one. You could have another one that you could work with that would do similar work. When it comes to the dead, I mean, there are certain spirits like, I don't think going to fucking Hermes and then going to Thor is going to get the same results, obviously. But when it comes to like a panel of judges and you're going through them, I think if one says no, there's probably two more that'll say yes. Because they're interested in working with the living because they remember what it's like being alive.
I'm sure.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you go.
Like, I mostly agree, like, not to contradict, like, Lydian. I think...
Of course you're going to contradict me. How fucking dare you?
I have to. The Virgo moon in me is going to say both sides. No, yeah, like, it truly is kind of like that. Like, not only are you not limited, like, okay, if the spirit says no, that's fine. Move on to something else, to someone else. But also, like, as a practitioner, I need this done now. Unfortunately, I wasn't really asking. If you're going to try and resist me, here is this pentacle of Saturn. Here's this pentacle of the sun. Here's this. Go do it.
Okay, so now I'm talking to the spirits that listen to our show. You can not work Sebastian, come to work with me. I will make sure that you're treated with fairness and consent, and if you tell me no, I will make sure that no is honored. Meanwhile, Sebastian's over there making spirits do whatever the fuck. It's like, I need a glass of water. Go get me this glass of water. No. Pinnacle of the sun.
Yeah, but it's like really dependent on everyone's practice. I think I have to remind everyone, not everyone is built for a certain type of work. And so, like we kind of said, like, for example, in some traditional grimoires, like there is more violent action, quote unquote, but it's like, okay, here is this black dagger that I have consecrated when certain things do what I say, or you threaten like actual physical pain. I'm not doing that, but I am being like, look, I do have command over you. I do have authority. I do have dominance. Go do this.
And then meanwhile, there's me who actually partakes in saint punishment of actual saints, not like La Santissima. I wouldn't do that, but like Saint Joseph, I'll bury that bitch upside down. Saint Francis, Saint Nancis, not today, honey. I guess this is a question that we kind of ask everybody, but like, it's interesting to get different people's takes on it, in my opinion. If fascism was overcome tomorrow, Austin, what do you think liberation would look like? Like, are we talking wicked, no one mourns the wicked, or are we talking defying gravity? How about that?
Terrible reference for me. I've never seen Wicked a day in my life. Not the new one, not the old one.
Ooh. We have a controversial opinion from a gay here on the Ember Report. Lynn is seething. Look at her. She's like, mm.
Do not put words in my mouth, Lydia. You shut the hell up.
I was looking at him like, I love your, I was talking a lot about Sweeney Todd yesterday for some reason.
I love Sweeney Todd.
Well, I noticed your poster, and I was talking about how my parents, when Sweeney Todd with Johnny Depp came out, I was like, I really wanted to see it because it was Johnny Depp, and at the time he was an amazing actor, and for I grew up with a love for Tim Burton. Whatever, sue me.
Why would we sue you? We all have one secret Tim Burton film fair. We like. Okay, one secret one.
Hey, he did a really good job, and then things went downhill from there. And then and they wouldn't let me see it because it was like a rated R film when it first came out, I remember. And they were like, we want to watch it, we want to make sure it's fine, blah, blah, blah. And then I was joking because on Halloween I watched The Crow recently, and it had been years and years and years since I've watched The Crow, the old one. The other one doesn't even exist.
It can't rain all the time.
But I was like, I was watching The Crow when I was like 4, and you thought that was a fine, just a hunky-dory movie for me to watch, but the Demon Barber of Fleet Street was going to be too graphic. Like, okay. Crazy. I unfortunately, I don't have high hopes for that. Not that I don't think it could be overcome tomorrow. I just think that the reality of
we're in it for the long haul and everything.
I think that I don't. I mean, if in a perfect ideal world, if it could be overcome tomorrow, I think that the aftermath is also something that like we would really have to reconcile with. And I know people personally who have lived through like what happens when a country's like war-torn and they're forming new borders and things like that. And I think that, it can be sexy in some ways to talk about liberation and war and like wanting to blow it all up or burn it all down. And I have those inclinations sometimes too and respect that. But I also think that like I've talked to people who have lost everything in the aftermath of that, and they were just people. And it's not it's difficult. And I think that the aftermath of what that looks like, or at least I think that that's what I interpreted your question to be, is like what does that look like after the fact, is like I think that it would be really bad. I think it would be really like, I think things would move into small, really tiny, divided up municipalities and like city-states and things like that, and there would be a lot of different wars with a handful of other people in terms of like, these small municipalities would like war with each other, and then there would be like, a dominating force, and then blah, 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 blah. And then we'd, maybe 100 years down the line, we'd have, 1,000 little countries all scattered across the U.S. And then I'm sure there would be a bunch of other countries that would try and come in and gather us all up. I don't know if that's the question that you were asking, and maybe if I answered that, I probably just gave away a lot of personal thoughts on what that would look like afterwards. But my thoughts and my insights are not very hopeful.
Honestly, though, that's 100% a valid response, and all answers to that question are valid responses, because it looks different for everybody. The idea of liberation, the idea of what would it look like if, the fuckers that are fucking things up just disappeared tomorrow. I don't think... Lynn said something a long time ago, and it stuck with me, because we would have to go through a collective... Go ahead, say it. Say your line.
Yeah, I was going to mention that again. we've talked about it before. It's not going to be a one and done thing. There's going to be a need for collective grieving over everything that we've lost all during the entire the war, the process, the before and the after. It's not going to immediately be perfect right away. Like it just won't.
It won't be because it can't be. It's by design. The system has broken the people down so far that if we were to collectively rise up and take back our country, take back anything that we think is ours, we would be in a period where we wouldn't know what to do with ourselves. Because we've been told what to do for so long by this government, by the entity that from childhood we've been told to trust, pledge our allegiance to, right? All these things. And when we grew up and stopped becoming disillusioned with this government, we realized that we are fucked. They have fucked us with no lube for years. And it is one of those things that we talk so much about overthrowing that system of oppression that we haven't done enough talking about what to do once we've overthrown the system of oppression. We have things where, like, people like Zoran and God, New York, if you're listening to me, and this will come out on Wednesday, but you better have done the right fucking thing. I swear to God, if I wake up Wednesday morning and find out you didn't do the right thing, I'll come burn your place down myself. Okay? We have all these talking points like, Medicare for all, things like, free college tuition, buses, childcare, all that, great. Those are great policies. Those are policies we should be fighting for. But they don't address the root problem. The root problem is we are oppressed people when we shouldn't be.
White people.
White people. White people.
White people
yeah.
are the problem.
Well, I'll just see the
I'm
fuck
just
out
kidding.
of here. I'm
Sort
seeing,
of.
I see you later now. I mean, that's true. It is white men in particular.
Well, okay. Like the problem, yes, we joke that it's men, it's white cishet men, but the problem is white supremacy. The problem is capitalism. It all boils down to that.
1,000%.
Yeah, and it needs to be overthrown. I don't know what your views, Austin, are on those types of things. I mean, we catch little snips and pieces on the show when you talk on, Southern Bramble, but honestly, I think you might be in the majority of let's just burn it down and hope for the best.
I teeter between the two because I don't think that I don't see a best outcome in that situation, but I also understand that there's definitely a need for mass change. And I think that change is coming a lot faster than people will be ready for, and many people will be comfortable with. Comfort isn't necessarily the thing that people care so much about, I think, in this instant. But I like to also remind people, well, everybody thinks they're going to be ready for it until it happens to them, and then you're like, oh, that's actually not what I signed up for. Because I think whatever you think it's going to be, it will actually look a lot worse. I mean, I don't think that a lot of people will survive that. And I don't even know if I would be able to, and this is coming from somebody who I'm actually quite tough and know how to do a lot of pretty helpful survivalist skills. And that being said, despite my inclination towards pessimism, because I'm actually quite an optimistic person.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. I hope I mean, the only thing that I can tell people to do right now, and the thing that I've been, getting at for a long time is talk to your neighbors and set aside some level of differences. If your neighbors are going to end up wanting to kill you, you don't have to eat with them. But I will say that I think that actually being in a legitimate community with people is the best thing that you can do. And unfortunately, community is a flashy buzzword right now, and it is very difficult to create. It's not easy. It's something that is constantly being worked on. And the individualist, the American individualists, like they really don't like it. And it's very funny because I know a lot of people, sorry if I'm going to call out anyone here, but it's like a lot of people are like, you know, how many times have I heard in my life, like, oh, let's drop everything and go buy a piece of land together, and then like we'll like co-own everything and it'll be like a communal living space. And I'm like, the people who say that, I'm like, I can tell you've never lived in communal living a day in your life, because it sucks. Because people suck. Because people suck and it's not fun, and it's not lovely in the slightest, and it isn't a good time, and it's like, oh, Carol and Sock didn't pay their rent this week, so like guess who that's on? It's on you to pay the mortgage and everybody else around you. So what do you do when that happens? You know, it's like, so that's the thing is I love how talking about the dead, and I'm over here on communal living and blah blah blah. And I'm like, no, I love living alone. I love my house. That's sue me. But that's also because I've done the other thing. And I'm like, and the people who haven't, and they idealize it, I'm like, and it's just like the people who idealize farm life. You haven't done it. And it is not a glamorous, sexy cottagecore. It's not fun. You're fucking broke. It's your whole entire, if you're like really doing it, your entire livelihood, including if you're going to eat, is dependent on what you do and what you grow. So again, it's a lot of idealized concepts, and then the reality of that is I think what I grapple with, and this is coming from somebody who I've had plenty of idealizations. I'm a Pisces, you know. I love to dream, and wouldn't that just be gorgeous? And then like, but I'm also heavily ruled by a bunch of fire and air in my chart, so. I am somebody who will actually go out and do that instead of just pontificating on it, and then I go and do that, and I'm like, oh, this actually is like, this is not as sexy as I thought it was going to be, and then, you know, and then you have to kind of go back and reassess and reaffirm with yourself is like, okay, what I thought versus like the reality of that are two different things. And I think, unfortunately, with the American lifestyle, and to hopefully circle us back into the conversation of death, I think that we're very disconnected on a lot of these subjects. And then, you know, and then you have to grapple with that situation, you know. It's just like, yeah.
I agree with that, and don't worry about going on the tangent, because I think when you work with the dead, it's something you said way earlier on. It's about living, and it's about life, and whatnot, and we have to remember that. And I am also someone who I have lived in a communal, like, apartment building, even, where it's like we share the same showers. Like it was an old admin building at an asylum in a place that I lived before that I'm not going to disclose. And communal showers, communal, like, living room, all the spaces, communal. It's fun for like 3 weeks, and then it's a little tedious. Yeah, and then it's over it. But like, I get the need for that right now. I get the need to have this conversation about like, maybe we should all just live together. It's safer that way. It's, you know, but at the end of the day, you're sacrificing a lot. But I think, okay, not to circle us back further, but like to get us to the place where we talk about the working that we have to do, because we could talk to you all day, and we still have to do a post show. It's one of those things that you have to be okay being uncomfortable if you're gonna do this work. It's not necessarily like what Sebastian said, doing it scared, but it is very uncomfortable work. Changing the world is hard, it is thankless, and it is not easy, which is redundant, but that's beside the point. It is one of those things where we have to be okay with being uncomfortable, being our privacy being taken, because when you work for the greater good, you're no longer a private person. Like we tried at our show to be, as private as possible, but even us, we understand that like there's a monicum of like accessibility that we have to have with the public. We have to be within this community where we're talking to each other, at least talking. Because if we're not talking, then we don't know what's going on, and it's just a fucking problem. But with that said, Sebastian, do we have a working, based on the Day of the Dead, based on the concepts and the things we've been talking about, working with the necromancy perimeters, and Austin, feel free to add your own little sugars and spices into our recipe if you like.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think this one will be a fun one for us to all collaborate, especially Austin kind of bringing in with the whole kind of addressing necromancy, Dia de los Muertos, all that. But I think too, before we dive into that, I think also remembering that even though I said earlier, I was like, saying like commanding these spirits, it's about building a relationship as well. That's going to be the first and foremost. And I hope you all have done your offerings, put your water out, put your oranges, pan de muerte, all that out. Put the fun stuff out. Don't forget that Dia de los Muertos is about death, but it's celebration. It's colorful, it's bright, it's fun. There's music, there's dancing, and we talked about that earlier. It's celebration of life, and it's celebration of life and death, because to us, we do not die. Like, death is not the end. This isn't something to just think about in that regard. Especially as a practitioner, there are these kind of concepts for us too. Is like, okay, well, is there reincarnation? But that's between like you and your spirits and your practice. But moving on, I think the idea that I want to kind of talk about, and we can kind of bring this back into like the concept of the show, the politicalness of the concepts that we're aiming at, is going to be summoning or working the dead in order to see results in the current political climate. So I think we should talk about how to bring forth the dead, or use necromantic materia in work to incite change, to enact these things, to change aspects. And maybe we can bring that forward with like bringing the concept of getting Grijalva into like the vote, like the actually passing it and ensuring their security in that seat could be a good way that we move forward. So before I continue, Austin, do you have any ideas in regards to that? I know it's kind of on the spot.
I think that I think one of the things, of course, that is important too is to always, like, you can empower local dead is important to me. And this is, it can look like working with individual spirits, but this can be like working with politicians in your local area, in your municipalities. I think it's oftentimes better to work small and local and then work out bigger. And so contracting and pacting with the dead that are local can always be really helpful, in my opinion.
Plus, they're dead. They have like the spiritual reach that we don't have, So
Yeah, absolutely.
even your local dead is like one of those things, you should just make good relationships with them anyway.
Absolutely. I mean, I think we kind of talked about it. It's all about networking. These people knew other people when they're alive. They're meeting other people now that they're dead, and other spirits and things as well. So I think working that is super important. I think too, I've always talked about like working local is going to work and see much better results than like aiming for the big picture. It's better to work your way up. instead of working your way down. And with that being said, I think too, maybe what I would recommend is um, gathering certain materia in order to enact certain change. So, for example, if we're looking to get, um, let's go more local, then let's go more direct of like building community. How can you protect your community? Let's talk like warding, like protecting, or information gathering is like another one. We've kind of talked about that recently. Gathering grave dirt while following the entire process, not just going and taking it, is a really useful tool as well. So like I always go back to a lawyer, like find a good lawyer, find out what they were good at, whether that's through communing with them, divination, or um, other means of research. Like if they specialized in negotiation, if they specialized in immigration, if they specialized in whatever, right? Getting their dirt, working their stuff, the dust off their tombstone, their headstone, working that is fantastic as well. Me in terms of getting Gri Halva into that sea. I am going to go grab a railroad spike. Maybe I will actually bury it at a depending and with permission at a certain grave or within a certain area of a graveyard for a certain amount of time, going and taking that. So now that railroad spike is empowered and nailing the an image or concept or whatever it is that I'm trying to accomplish down, so that way Grijalva gets into that seat. I think too, working not just humans, right? I've talked about this before, like bring up some hounds, bring up some birds. If you are working things like if you can get a hold of that type of materia, that works wonders as well. Performing necromancy with animals, creatures, can be beneficial as well, right? So like birds are really great at information gathering. Hounds are really good at, dogs are really good at finding things that are lost, finding information, but also really good at protection. They're really good at getting your work where it needs to go. Same thing with cats. Cats are really good at like making sure things remain hidden, making sure things are moving behind the scenes, going out and placing your work where it needs to. So I think this is like one way to definitely work. I definitely, if anyone has anything else to add, please go ahead.
I think that's great. I think those are great ideas. Working the spirits, it really, it ties back to what you said. It's networking, getting that network of spirits going and such. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that was a great working. With that being said, this has been the Ember Report, where resistance is witchy and spells are not optional. I'm Lydian, the voice in the flame.
I'm Len, the Witch at the Crossroads.
I'm Sebastian, the Sorcerer of Annihilation.
And you are muted.
You're muted, darling.
And I'm Austin, BanexBramble.
Where can we find your work, Austin? Like, yeah, I know you said BanexBramble, but is there anywhere else you're at?
Yeah, I'm trying to be in other places, but that's going to take time and effort. And but my main hub is my website, BanexBramble.com. That is where I post a lot of workings. Actually, I have a full-blown database that I'm compiling. So that is there. You can find me as a co-host on the Southern Bramble podcast with my co-host Marshall. What else do I do? If you're in Tampa or the St. Pete area, please come out to A Culture Tampa. We are actually done for the year. We will our November meetup was our last one, but come February, we will be starting up again. And you can always DM me on Instagram because I'm geriatric and I don't use TikTok. And There you go. That's my spiel.
I love it. Oh my goodness. Austin, you're so funny.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm surprised you didn't tell us where you could find your womanly wares. That's become our favorite line.
Yes, you can find my womanly wares at BanexBramble.com.
I love that. We will be carrying. So you go.
If today's fire stirred something in you, share it. Cast it wide.
If you'd like to linger a while, there's always tea on the stove, a place in the resistance, and room at our table.
And before we sign off, we'd like to thank our Patreon supporters by name because they are keeping the fire going. Sabrina and Pablo, thank you so much for your support. Your efforts keep us going. And for the rest of you, we are going to be carrying this Ember over to Ashes and Sparks, our Patreon after show, for an extended conversation with Austin. You can find that at patreon.com/theemberreport, where for as little as $1, you can get access to the after show, the Discord, and a bunch of other goodies that we got going on. Until next time.
May our rage spark resistance.
May our grief become fire.
May our magic be sharp and unrepentant.
The lantern is lit.
You're still out there.
And so are we.